Transformer!
Dark Mirror, Chapter 8. Takanuva crouched behind a wall, a wounded Lesovic beside him. All around, elemental power bursts were flying, warriors were screaming, and a disaster beyond his imagination was taking place. It had all started out so well. Lesovic's band had made it close to the Colosseum before being spotted. As planned, Takanuva had used his newfound shadow powers to blind the guards. Pohatu followed with a massive fist of stone that cracked the walls of the huge structure. To the east, Makuta Pterodax led Krika, Kojal, Taragaduma, and Takua into battle. At first they made short work of the Matoran and Toa who guarded Tuyet's fortress. Then it all went wrong. A Toa of iron appeared on the walls, and a hail of spikes spelled the end of Takua. Takanuva watched in sheer horror as his other self collapsed and died. Kojal fell next, his armor crushed by the Toa's power, and his essence incinerated by a Toa of plasma. Pterodax was forced to pull back. Things were going no better for Lesovic's squad. Primal had run into Tahu at the eastern entrance and killed the Toa of fire, but the sudden appearance of Gali and a sphere of water around the Dark Hunter's head left him to drown on dry land. Toa Krakua hit Gali with a wave of solid sound, blasting apart her mask and armor. Pohatu cried out too late. Akmu had already dashed ahead and slain the fallen Toa of water. He didn't get to enjoy his triumph long. Kopaka flash-froze Akmu, and a swipe from Anua's claws shattered the Matoran into little pieces of crystalline protodermis. Now it was no longer one battle, but a dozen separate ones being fought at once, the lines moving back and forth. Pohatu fought his way into the Colosseum, but found himself too evenly matched with Onua to make much progress. Lesovic fell with an ice dagger in his shoulder, but rallied to blow Kopaka off his post high atop the Colosseum. Takanuva winced as the Toa of ice hit the ground and lay still. "Now," said Lesovic to Takanuva, "darkness will lead the way. Get in there and do what you have to." "What about you?" asked Takanuva. "We'll give them something to remember," said Lesovic. Takanuva took one last look around. Nuju was side by side with Guardian, keeping a Toa of magnetism too off balance to use his powers. Pterodax's forces had charged again. Krika used his vacuum power to absorb Lua's attacks until Pterodax could summon a bolt of lightning, powerful enough to turn a Toa to ashes. Darkness was already on the move, slipping through the cracks in the Colosseum walls. Takanuva used his shadow power to enlarge them, and followed. Inside, the Colosseum was strangely silent. One would never know a battle raged outside its walls. A team of Toa rushed by on their way to join the fight. Steeling himself, Takanuva fired laser blasts at the ceiling, bringing the rubble down on top of them. He still found himself hoping he had only stunned them, not killed them. Together, Toa and Dark Hunter fought their way to their goal, the Hall of Masks. They had made it to the chamber door when darkness paused. He heard something. The next instant the door exploded outward as a wall of water erupted from within, sweeping darkness away. Takanuva managed to grab hold of a doorway, holding on with all his might and holding his breath. Outside, Pterodax's attack had met with success, as Toa fell before him and Krika. Taragaduma had rallied Lesovic's group, although not before Nuju had been pulled into the archives by plant life gone wild. Guardian, too, fell, but took half a dozen Toa with him. Back in the Colosseum, the deluge had finally stopped. There, framed in the chamber door, stood Toa Tuyet, Nui stone in one hand, mask of dimensional gates in the other. "I know who you are," she said. "Or rather, I have guessed. You don't belong here." "Neither do you," said Takanuva. "You don't exist in my world. True Toa must have stood up and stopped you before you went too far." "In my world I am much more competent," she replied. "How unfortunate for you." "All right then," said Takanuva. "For Takua, for Lesovic, and for all the Toa and Matoran whose lives you have ruined, I strike." To be concluded. Dark Mirror, Chapter 9. Toa Tuyet stood over the battered, semi-conscious body of Takanuva, Toa of Light. He did not stir. Being blown through half a dozen walls by a focused tidal wave will do that to you. Tuyet smiled.
Pathetic. Truly pathetic. If you are an example of what a Toa are like in your universe, it's a wonder you haven't all been hunted to extinction by now.
The ruler of the Toa Empire slipped off her mask of intangibility and replaced it with the Kanohi Olmak, the mask Takanuva had come seeking. This mask alone had the power to open gateways to interdimensional space, and it was Takanuva's only hope of escaping this twisted world.
Your friends outside are dead, or soon will be. I admit I was surprised to find they still had some fight left in them after 3,500 years. But they can't be allowed to rob the Matoran of the peace I have brought them.
Takanuva managed to get to his hands and knees, rubble sliding off his back as he did so. He looked at Tuyet with eyes that held equal parts of contempt and pity. "Peace," he said in disbelief. "Is that what you call perverting the Toa into secret police, terrorizing villagers, killing anyone who opposes your rule?"
I did what had to be done. I made the world right. And who are you to judge me? You are nothing but an alien from some other dimension.
Takanuva hurled a blast of shadow at Tuyet, temporarily cloaking her in darkness. By the time she could see again, he was gone. But his voice came from high above her, saying, "That's true. My world is messier than yours, more dangerous in some ways, but it's a world that's better because you're not in it, Tuyet." The Toa of Water unleashed her power, bringing the ceiling down, but Takanuva was not there. Instead, he sprang from the opening at the far end of the hall, hurling blinding light at Tuyet as he made a grab for her mask. She spun, caught him by the arm, and threw him hard to the floor.
I have hundreds of times your power. You are nothing but a light stone to be ground to the dust beneath my heel.
Takanuva attacked again, hurling bolts of shadow and light. To his amazement, Tuyet parried them with ease. Seeing his surprise, she laughed.
You know, we had no Toa of light in this universe. We didn't need one, and in a few moments, we will be back to being without one.
Takanuva charged. The next few seconds were a blaze of battle, lasers turning water to steam, waves crashing against walls, a race to see what would happen first, Takanuva drowning in the tide, or Tuyet drowning in darkness. When the fight was through, Tuyet stood once more triumphant.
Enough! I have wasted enough time on you. Your rebellion is finished, and now so are you.
Tuyet was about to strike when a strange sound penetrated the damaged Colosseum. Takanuva raised his head and glanced out a hole in the wall. He saw hundreds, no thousands of Matoran marching toward the building, all of them armed. In the distance he could see airships and seagoing vessels carrying other Matoran, Dark Hunters, Vortex, and others. All of them were descending on the city, their eyes fixed on the Colosseum. "Still think the rebellion is over?" Takanuva asked. "Or maybe it's just beginning."
The fools! With my power I can sweep them all away in a flood like no one has seen before.
Takanuva looked right into Tuyet's eyes. Then who would there be left to protect? Who would you have made your perfect universe for? Tuyet smiled.
Very clever, Toa. True, a universe with only drowned Matoran would not be of much to anyone. But they must be taught respect.
Why? If they are so ungrateful, why not use your mass to travel somewhere else? Someplace that needs you. Start over again in another metru-nui, one where they might welcome a ruler like you. Tuyet glanced down at the street. The mob was coming closer, and though she could easily kill them all, it would leave her as the ruler of an empire of corpses. Perhaps Takanuva was right. At the least, she could leave and return with an army of Toa from some other dimension, enough to stamp out every last vestige of rebellion in her own world. She turned away and activated her mask. A portal into interdimensional space opened before her, and she prepared to step in. That was when Takanuva made his move. He somehow managed to hurl himself at Tuyet, snatching the mask from her face. The second it lost contact with her, its power shut off and the portal began to close. Takanuva, mask in hand, dove through, but Tuyet was not about to let him escape so easily. Even as he cleared the portal, she grabbed onto his leg, trying to follow him. She blasted him with hard bolts of water, catching his hand and tearing the mask from his grasp. It floated away into the space between dimensions. Takanuva turned back. What he saw horrified him, but his shouted warning came too late. Tuyet was halfway through the portal, trying to drag Takanuva back in. She was so consumed by rage that she never noticed the portal closing until it was much too late. She screamed as reality slammed shut on her body, leaving her upper half in the void and her lower half in the Colosseum on her world. Mercifully, death came instantly. Takanuva hovered in space for a long moment. He wondered what would happen in Tuyet's universe with her gone. Would the Toa become protectors again? Would the Matoran take control? Or would some group like the Dark Hunters or Makuta become new dictators? Perhaps someday, if he was able, he would return to find out the answer. He turned his head away from the remains of Tuyet, wondering how a Toa could go so wrong, and realizing with a shudder what a very fine line it could be between justice and tyranny. Tuyet's life had been wasted, but the lives of no more Toa would be lost if he could prevent it. With grim resolve, he resumed his journey to Cardanui. The end.